How are you? Welcome to Critical Moves of Telesur. Once again, President Donald Trump has thrown some menaces against the World Health Organization. He has already announced the suspension of the financiation of the United States to the World Health Organization. What is this based on? What is the context and he does it? What are the reactions to this? How will this have the repercussions on the sanitarian situation? This is what we're going to be analyzing. Let's begin. Just recently, President Trump has officialized that all of the money that's given to the World Health Organization would be withdrawn. Today, I have ordered the administration to withdraw all of the funds given to the World Health Organization. Everybody knows that the taxes paid by the U.S. citizens give $400 and $500 million per year to the World Health Organization. In contrast, China only gives $500,000 a year, even less. As the main sponsor of the World Health Organization, the U.S. has the right to know about the accounting of the organization. If the World Health Organization would have done their work, so the experts would have gone into China, done an assessment in the field, and would have denounced the lack of transparency in China, this would have been able to be stopped and have less deaths. In contrast to the numbers we see now, millions of lives would have been saved, and this damage would have been avoided. However, the World Health Organization gave all of the guarantees to China. They defended all of their actions, and they even they said good things about them, about the lack of transparency. It's unfair that the United States gives $450 million to the World Health Organization, while China only gives $42 million. This is not fair. Even other countries should give less money to the United States. When they speak about politicizing this fact, I can't believe that they're saying this. Well, you can see this relationship between the World Health Organization and China. The organizations have to give in results for what they're made for. We have to ensure that not only the World Health Organization, but all other organizations do so. We give them the money so that there will be some benefit for the U.S. The World Health Organization is also in this group, and they should do what they were paid for. And to inaction, there are many reactions. This decision of the United States will weaken the capacity of the World Health Organization and will undermine the international cooperation in this fight against the pandemic. It will affect all of the countries of the world, even the United States itself, especially those that are more vulnerable to the crisis. We are calling upon the United States to fulfill their responsibilities and obligations and to support the World Health Organization to lead the international cooperation in this fight against the pandemic. China, as always, will always support the World Health Organization and will have a leading role in promoting international health and will also contribute in the fight against this disease. That's our message. Unity, with no politicization, with not giving blame or trying to win points. We have many other ways to show that we have to work. This is not the way to make policy. This is like playing with fire. Sincere solidarity with leadership from the United States and China. We have more problems than during the Cold War. Whoever has problems on the political level should join and try to find a solution. This is not the time to cut funds to the World Health Organization. Once we've finished this pandemic, there should be a time to look back and understand how this came about and how it spread its destruction all around the world and how all of the involved have responded to the crisis. And speaking of the reactions, what is being said from the United States? This is what our correspondent says. Hello, Jorge. How are you? Thank you very much. The decision of President Trump to stop the support to the World Health Organization has provoked a lot of criticism in the United States, beginning by New York, by the General Secretary of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who literally said, "This is not the time to reduce the funds." And this was in Atlanta. The CDC said the World Health Organization is an important ally in public health. Bill Gates said that this decision is very dangerous. The Chamber of Commerce of the U.S. are absolutely against the decision. The opposition of the Democratic opposition has totally raised their voice, saying that the decision has so much sense as cutting all of the ammunition to the allies while the enemy is coming about. And they give an emphasis on President Trump does not have the authorization to take this decision, such as cutting the funds, in a unilateral sense. They also said that cutting the funds could undermine the global response to this disease. Let's go back to studios. Thank you very much, Jorge. So we don't understand how the Trump administration attacks the World Health Organization during this pandemic. How about if we do a timeline on everything that's going on? January 31st of December, the OMS had the first alert of 44 cases of a pneumonia that came from Wuhan. The World Health Organization asked for an investigation and determined the cause. On January 31st, the World Health Organization declared international alert when they called on global work to have extraordinary contention measures. On that date, China had over 9,000 people infected. Then, in the midst of the world confrontation on February 27, they said that the United States was ready to confront any risk. Then, on March 20th, President Trump discarded the application of quarantine, and they said that it was not obligatory to stay in-house. Many governors did ask for this quarantine, and they said that this government was winning the war against COVID-19. By then, 19,393 infected were counted, while the United States is reporting that 431,437 cases are now infected. However, they said that the World Health Organization is not doing enough. Well, after the accusations that President Trump has done, the World Health Organization has made a statement saying that this organism, stating their positions, and about all of the money that is given to this organization. And they should know that this money is not only for the United States, but for all of the World Health Organization. Let's go over part of this statement. United States gave 2018-2019 around $551 million, which is 14.67% of the global budget of the World Health Organization. And for this, just 1% was given to give to the headquarters in Geneva. Then another percentage was for World Health programs in Africa, and the rest for the Mediterranean. The Bill and Melinda Foundation is the second major supporter of this organization. They gave 9.76% of the budget to the World Health Organization in 2018-2019. Just after that comes the Global Alliance for the Vaccines and Immunization. And then the second country in supporting the World Health Organization is United Kingdom with 7.79%. After its third place, Germany with $292 million, which is 5.86%. So this is let's keep the numbers clear, and that way we can all get along. But let's see a map of this organization. When it came about, what does it do, what is it in charge of? Let's check. World Health Organization, a new focus of imperialist attacks. The World Health Organization is the authority of the sanitarian affairs within United Nations. They have as a functions to lead the sanitary affairs in the world, to establish the agenda of investigation and give laws in terms of sanitary restrictions. They also give technical support for countries that have problems and be vigilant of the sanitary condition of the world. The World Health Organization began in United Nations in 1948, which gave the first rules charter for this organization. However, until 1948, they had the first meeting in Geneva. Many countries are part of it. This is 196 countries through the World Health Organization. And they define their delegates so they can go to the assembly, which is normally held in May, and define the financial policies. They also approve the budget by programs. In this meeting, there are delegates that are chosen for many authorities. As one of the main one is the Executive Council, and what they do is they carry out the decisions that are taken by the Assembly. Within their agenda, the World Health Organization seeks to promote the development of the peoples, foment the sanitary security, structure the systems of health, take advantage of investigations, work together with the alliances of other organisms, and improve their own work. Let's go to our first pause, but let's not forget that you have a chance to interact with us. I was checking, but ever since the beginning, we see that there is a lot of participation. Here we have our question of the day. President Trump is going against the World Health Organization, being the United States the epicenter of this pandemic, of the COVID-19. They decide to suspend all of the financing to the sanitary organism because apparently they did not go through with all of what they're supposed to do, and they're too much friends of China. What are they really worried about? What's on Trump's mind? Participate. We want to hear from you. When on January 30th, the World Health Organization director declared that the burst of this disease was a health crisis of international importance. There was the mechanisms that were put into place to take prevention all through the world. Let's see what they were. With the objective of stopping the expansion of the COVID, the World Health Organization demanded that there be a crisis team to establish the spreading of all of the actions throughout the world, the United Nations, and be able to prepare to confront this disease. Through this response and answer measures, there was a lot of actions that were determined so they can start preparing. Among all of the actions that were suggested were prevention and to prepare on behalf of the sanitary authorities by hospitals and to prepare the hospitals to receive people that are infected. The World Health Organization alerted that there would be the need to implement social distancing, closing cities, and suspending massive activities, because the only way to contain the expansion would be to isolate all of the people who are contagious. to these actions, there are others more, such as isolation of those patients that have already proven positive. The other actions is to mitigate all of the expansions with those who have chronic disease, women that are pregnant and that are breastfeeding. Ever since the beginning of this pandemic, the World Health Organization has asked for collaboration among countries. This has been strongly criticized by the U.S. president because he has even declared that they're going to withdraw the money that is given to the World Health Organization. The president, who he himself has evaded the responsibility for downplaying the severity of this disease. Well, they say that the World Health Organization lost their time when they first knew about what happened, and because they had never taken measures months before. Let's begin with the analysis and our critical moves. Today we have Jorge Luis Ubertar, and he is from Washington, D.C., and we have our friend Patricio, who's also an international expert. I would like to greet both of you. Let's begin with Jorge Luis. First of all, how should we interpret this new attack of Donald Trump now against the World Health Organization? Good morning to all. Well, what I see is that what we see with the personality of Trump, there is a political society, and what they're seeking is just political stability. There is a strong economic group that needs to be happy, and in this sense, President Trump, who we've seen says something and does something different, and they agree with what's going on because the militaries can intervene in other countries. We're sure that the strong economic groups are telling Mr. Trump what to do, and he just goes ahead with it. And let's not forget that the same militaries that are used for war are the ones that are needed now in the U.S. There is these war carriers, for example, one is that in Guam. So this thing of Trump, of kicking things forward and withdrawing this money from the World Health Organization is something that is just a facade, because he's interested in keeping up with this pandemic. What they're trying to do is to start a war. This is my interpretation of everything that's going on in the United States and how the COVID appeared, and especially how to neutralize this war. And what he's saying is that he's insisting on this war, and what they want to do is to put people against China, Russia, Venezuela, and this is the reality. Coronavirus is just stopping the effect that he wanted to have. Thank you, Jorge Luis. Please stay with us for a minute. Let's speak with Patricio Zamorano. Having seen the current situation of the United States in the midst of this pandemic, it's obviously right now the epicenter of this disease, and on the other hand, the wave of criticism that Donald Trump has received in the recent hours by even other countries that finance the World Health Organization in the United States, like, for example, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. How should we see this move of the White House? Is he trying to be the victim with this accusation against the World Health Organization? Well, I think to understand everything that's going on behind these statements, it's important to live in the United States and understand. So I think the explanation is very clear. United States is desperate due to political and electoral situations. Let's not forget, we're going on with the primaries, and it has been severely affected by the coronavirus. He knows that he's one step behind Biden, who's going to be the Democratic candidate, and who is, according to the polls, 11 points above Trump. This, according to the CNN poll. Donald Trump cannot do a political campaign as he is used to. He can't have a stadium with 20, 30,000. He's totally frustrated. Principally by the economic subject. And he's frustrated against the World Health Organization because they keep this symbolic case of world pandemic. And he is desperate to open economy. There is internal pressure in the U.S. who is pushed by Trump. So the states will open their economy and the country will start to react. And of course, he is desperate. Something else which is important, he had increased his approval when the checks were sent out to the citizens to help the people with the effects of this pandemic. But now the approval rate are going down even to 42%. And a disapproval that is going up to 55%, according to a Reuters poll. These are the reasons he's desperate, and what he knows that there's going to be an economic recession just upcoming. Patricio, you have just set on the table a very interesting position, saying that Trump is trying to take advantage of the situation to continue with his campaign. And he does it at the same time when he says that the international community is politicizing against the United States in regards to the pandemic. This is true. There is no rational reason that that anybody can understand why taking away funds to the most important organization in health. The thing is that the United States has a bad situation in several states like New Jersey and Washington, and the rest of the countries, the rest of the states have a reasonable situation, but with New York, it becomes the epicenter of the world, and he needs some type of justification to blame somebody. In this case, China, fundamentally, and all of his economic war is opposing China. And one of the main contradictions, we should not forget that in January, one of the first tweets, he was making fun of China being the beginning of this disease. He even congratulated the Chinese president. So there is a very important contradiction that takes away all of the credibility he has. And this thing of withdrawing the money from the World Health Organization is just an electoral topic. As soon as this emergency situation is over, he will continue with his campaign. Thank you, Patricio. Please stay with us during the next minutes. Jorge Luis, based on what Patricio said, I was thinking on this question. This daily agenda, it's thank you, Patricio. Please stay with us during the next minutes. Jorge Luis, based on what Patricio said, I was thinking on this question. This daily agenda, it's he's always mentioning China. Let's not forget, at the beginning of the year, just before the outburst of the coronavirus, with like the big news that it is, we see that Donald Trump spoke very in favor of China. Now we hear a totally different situation. He's speaking against China, saying that the World Health Organization is a friend of Beijing, especially with, well, speaking of the president. So this is part of the daily agenda. What is behind all of this? Well, I would like to insist that the reactivation on the economic front is basic, and the military front needs to have a war. So this goes all around this industrial gear, and the military complex is stopped. And what they're trying to do is push the president to start to pick a fight against China or Russia. This happened before with North Korea. So among the pressures of the military complex to provoke a war, and they have to stimulate this topic of the coronavirus and speak against China and Russia. But the coronavirus, they don't want to, the militaries don't want to do a war. Let's not forget that what they do is they fabricate weapons of war. And that boosts the economy of the United States. So this is the main problem that the U.S. says, to confront all of the entrepreneurs of the military fabrication. So coronavirus, in a way, has interfered with the military's intention of making a war. So whatever Trump says, he can say whatever he wants. But the power behind the power are these businessmen and the military fabrication companies, that they want to develop a conventional war against China and Russia, now against Venezuela too. This is the analysis I can give you. Thank you, Jorge Luis. Patricio, let's go back to you. What do you think that the United States is now the epicenter of the COVID in such a short span of time? What has stopped them to give national policies to stop the pandemic? Well, it's a mixture of two reasons. One is structural, and the other one is a political one. The structural one is that in real terms, it is the joining of states, and each one has international independence with what's going on in their states. So there is a division of the budgets, of strategies, and this has gone against a federal coordination. Beyond just the structure is the incapacity of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has done a political equation every day of this crisis to confronting the governors. And now the president of the governors of California and New York have been very active, and now they are the main faces of what's going on in prevention in the United States. Donald Trump, due to political reasons, what he's doing is to confront and to argument very aggressively every time that he sees that a governor is attacking him. And in fact, Donald Trump has been very worried on diminishing this risk of coronavirus, because he was very much afraid of closing down the economy of the U.S. Let's not forget that internationally, the United States is very strong. But internally, the president cannot demand all of the states to open their economies. This decision is up to the hands of the governors of each state. This happened especially with the governor of Washington, who he has offended. And she has done a great job Same thing with the governor of New York. He has threatened that he's going to withdraw all of the respirators, and he's done this in front of the cameras. So all of this gives you a very clear signal why there is such a big crisis that that also is led by the few amounts of tests, and it is not clear what is the big points of infections, and they have not been able to stop like China has. So it's an incapacity that comes from the presidency of the United States, but it is also a structural problem of how the union is established. So, Patricio, if I'm not mistaken, this war that Trump is establishing beyond the borders of the U.S., but this war is also against his own governors. This is right. In concrete, what he's really doing is elevating the profile of all of the governors. You can even see how the vice president potential candidate would be the governor of Washington, who has had to confront the president because she is representing the people of Washington. Let's not mistake this with Washington, D.C., which is the District of Columbia. We're speaking of the state of Washington. Apparently, it is being said that the governor of the state of Washington could possibly be the vice president running for the presidency with Vice President Biden. Ever since we have understood how terrible the problem has been, like for example in New York, the governor of New York has had more protagonism than the president himself. You could not imagine the same handling of this crisis with President Obama. President Obama would have a more calming effect with the people, and obviously he would have helped the World Health Organization. Trump, on the contrary, has done all of the boycotts that all of the states are trying to put forward, and in this sense, this strategy answers to the confrontation attitude that the followers of Trump like about Donald Trump. He's speaking to his 30% vote. Thank you very much, Patricio. What we see is that Trump is trying to take advantage in-house. Just looking forward to November 3rd. Jorge Luis, we're listening to Patricio, who lives in the United States. How do you see it from abroad? Let's not forget that November 3rd will be the elections in the United States, and Trump is trying to gain the presidency once again. Well, the problem of the United States is not the electoral process. It's the organic crisis that it has. They have a total crisis. It's the structural crisis. So therefore, they don't know what to do. It could be coronavirus or anything else. Because what's important for them is to keep the economic strong groups in a good situation. When Marx spoke in his book of the capitalism, he said, after us, it would be total failure. And obviously, they think that probably would be better to have a total flood if they're not going to be the rulers of this world. So this would answer why are these contradictions of the United States, and this could give you an answer of why all the responsibilities of the President of the United States are going down the drain. This could answer also why there is such a confrontation between the governors of the states and the president. So, Jorge Luis, what you're saying is in the midst of this disaster, he could be reelected. I repeat, do you think Donald Trump could be reelected in the midst of this disaster? Well, I don't know if he has a chance or not. But I don't know what's going to happen up until November. But this is a world crisis. And they themselves have provoked it to try to to pick a war. But the other countries have not fallen into their game. What I do know is that we don't know what's going to happen until here to November. And we can also see that many people have died with the coronavirus. And I'm not a magician. I can't foretell the future. But what I do know is that the United States is a country in decadence. And that those fabricators of weapons will do anything to keep their heads up and keep on making a profit. So, as Marx said, either it's us or the big flood. And let's hope that that doesn't go to that point. Thank you very much, Jorge Luis, and thank you, Patricio. Let's go to a brief pause. Remember, you can answer the question of the day, and we'd like to hear from you. The question is, Donald Trump is attacking the World Health Organization while the United States is the epicenter of the COVID-19, and they suspend all of the financiation to this organism because allegedly they're not fulfilling their missions and that they're too much of friends with China. What is really on his mind? What is behind all this? Let's go to a pause. We'll be right back. The quick expansion of the COVID-19 throughout the world is in the midst of stopping the infection of this disease. The new coronavirus has infected over 2 million people in 187 countries. The United States is the country that has the biggest amount of numbers. There's 26,000 people dead by now, according to Johns Hopkins University. Just in New York, they have more than 2,000 people infected. With the countries that are leading the fight against is Cuba, Venezuela, and Argentina, because they're giving clear directions to the population on how to go about and helping the most vulnerable sectors, and also putting more vigilance on the health system. In contrast, the government of the United States has shown that they are not ready for all of this. They have only recommended social distancing, and in some states, the authorities have asked the people to stay at home, but by their own initiative, they've done this, not by directions of the White House. This is how the White House is leading the numbers. Now, President Bolsonaro of Brazil is also doing the same problem. Chile is also severely affected, and they have announced that there's an emergency economic project, and they will give away some money and some goods. Colombia, another country with several numbers, just last week decreed the state of emergency, and before they only had mild policies of asking people to have social confinement. Second moment of the interview. Let's go with Francisco Coanes of Chile. He's a sociologist and an international expert. Welcome, Francisco, to our critical move of today. So, what can you say of what Donald Trump is doubting of the World Health Organization as one of the leading speakers in this? Just because they say that they have strong ties with China, who are the arch enemies of the White House. And also, Donald Trump says that he has no idea what the World Health Organization does with the money that the U.S. is giving to them. And let's not forget that there are other people who sponsor the organization. Well, this is he's trying to pick a fight, a war. We should say this clearly. With the boost of this epidemic, this is a pandemic, and from the beginning he didn't really believe it was going to be such a big problem, and then he was surprised, like when George Bush received the 9/11 attacks. This is a terrorist attack, because this is he wants to say this so they will be able to attack China and the other countries. Who did it? It's important to investigate this and not speculate. I have a thesis. I think it's a non-state force led by a group of states to try to affect the world economy and change the world order. We don't know towards where. This analysis has to be in the White House. It has to be in the head of Donald Trump. However, he acts with immediate responses and strategic responses, trying to blackmail the World Health Organization, taking away $500 million. That is the contribution of the U.S. to the World Health Organization. But what is the end of all of this? What is the objective? The objective is to unleash a chaos internationally, and where no law will be respected. And this is what Donald Trump ever did since the beginning, and that he was not going to operate. And what he was going to do is to do America first and to recover United States. And he was going to do this within the legal framework of United Nations. And according to their charter, too. This is what he announced. This is the way he governs. And in terms of recovering stability, I think that the United States, they have a sense of culpability because they did not confront the coronavirus at the front. I have said this before on several occasions. This is done by a non-governmental organization. If a state, it would be terrible if a state did it, because it would be it would speak very poorly of this country and of the whole world, of the World Organization. But now the international community, except for Iran, Russia, Venezuela, North Korea, and other countries, an isolated way, they have allowed that the United States have this way of conducting themselves. It's us, just us, the international community. Well, it's me, it's you. However, the international community, speaking of the world leaders, have reacted in a very soft and ambiguous way against this aggression that the United States, and what they start by saying is that there is a war, and they take away the support to the World Health Organization, and this is the beginning of a war. Well, speaking of the Trump administration, this is what they did with the Paris Accord, with the G5+1. Let's not forget what he did with UNESCO. This attack against the World Health Organization, just as going against other aggressions. This is what they always do with all of the sanctions against countries and institutions, international institutions. You're right. President Donald Trump, because behind him there are interest groups that are trying to change the the world outcome. This is the neoconservative doctrine that was dominating the world spectrum. We had the invasion on Iraq on behalf of Bush. Let's not forget that was horrible. It was a news fraud that was huge. People have forgotten about it. That was a trigger, a very important trigger that told you that the United States was going to be an absolute sovereignty. Barack Obama tries to soften it a bit, all of the damage. And now we have this biological attack on China with which the United States is trying to cover it and trying to look over it with these measures that are so damaging, like withdrawing the support to the World Health Organization. So what we have is a country that is a chaos, and what they're trying to do is to recover their hegemony through actions that are not legitimate. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Do it with legitimate weapons, not killing humanity. This is what's happening now with coronavirus. And Francisco, what do you think are the repercussions of this decision that up until now is just suspending? It's not withdrawing, but right now they're suspending the financing to the World Health Organization. What are the repercussions you think this act might have, not only to the Americans themselves, but also to the international community? Well, I think that the reactions up until now have been way too soft. I think that the countries are afraid due to their own internal problems caused by the COVID, and this is a military strategy on behalf of the United States. And what they're trying to do is test what is the global reaction and to see if they can continue with the strategy of war. So they are in a strategy of war right now. Against who? A war against the situation of the world order, and specifically against China. Francisco, when I speak about repercussion, I mean, how is this withdrawal of funds going to have on the operation of the World Health Organization in the midst of this crisis? Well, yes, this is an important deficit should the money not be given to the World Health Organization.
Es un ataque frontal a la lucha contra el coronavirus.
It's an attack against the coronavirus.
Digamos, es atacar.
It's to attack
la posibilidad
the possibility of solving this problem. United States is interested in to increase the coronavirus, and they have no compassion in this regard, because it's important to understand that this is being done to 30, 40, 50 years lapse, because there's going to be a change in the world order, and it's going to be counted from the end of this crisis. The countries are reacting one by one according to the possibility of confronting this crisis. We see that countries are being blackmailed. So we're going to see how we have an international community that is fighting against this disease. And the Security Council should also have a say in this. Let's not forget, it's France, the UK, United States, Russia, and China. And there are many measures that are not being carried out. I think it's important to understand that this is a war. This is an economic war. The United States is in a war plan. This is their attitude. The countries will not interpret it like this. They don't see it this way. They don't interpret it in the correct way, this attack to the international community. This is not an attack on the World Health Organization. This is an attack on the entire United Nations Charter. So each one, in their terms, must react to all of this. We have seen a soft reaction on behalf of the international community to contain this type of actions on behalf of the United States. You just mentioned, Francisco, names of countries that are part of the self-called Grupo of Lima Group. So I would like to know, do you think that they're not interpreting this action, or they just don't want to see it, they don't want to interpret it? So thank you very much for your time for Telesur. Let's go to our conclusions. Well, Donald Trump has scored another point and against unilateral organizations for unfulfilling their charter and their rules. And apparently what he says is that they have an unfair situation, being the United States, the epicenter of the pandemic. So all of these masks are unmasking the truth behind this. What will be the repercussion of the suspension of the funds to the World Health Organization and even to the Americans themselves? How about if this arrogant action will go against himself? And having heard all of the criticism that he received, what are the political repercussions of this during an electoral year? This is what we'll be seeing. Thank you very much.